Hey, welcome back guys to Intermediate JavaScript and jQuery programming with JSON and AJAX. My name is Kaustav Garge, but you can call me KG. I'll be covering session 10 of this Intermediate JavaScript course today. Before we begin, let's look at the session outline. So in this session, we'll be covering calling JSON APIs. We'll understand what JSON is and what JSON APIs are. We'll understand how to get the data from calling these JSON APIs and building DOM from it. And we'll also learn on adding interactivity to dynamically created assets. Alright, so if you have not taken the Fundamental of JavaScript course, you must take the Introduction to JavaScript course or HTML to understand the document object model. Before we understand what JSON APIs are, let's quickly review what a JSON is. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It is a lightweight data interchange format that is easy to understand, read and write for us humans, and it is also easy for machines to parse and generate. In simplest terms, it is a common language with which the backend and the front-end systems talk to each other. It is universal too, which means that virtually all modern programming languages support it in one form or the other. It is a collection of value object pair. So let's look at an example real quick. So let me open this up. So now let's say you wanted to get all the users available in your system from the server. You would ask the server to send the list of these users. Let me actually make this a little bit bigger. Let's see if I can do that. All right, there you go. So the users, the system will send these users in this following format, as you can see. Now you can see all of the users on the JSON format. So this is an example of a JSON format. So we have defined each and every user has an object with the ID, the name, the username, email. The address itself is a different object, which includes geolocation as well. And they have phone, website, and company. Again, it's a different object. Right? So this is an array of objects. So we get this when we call the JSON APIs. Now moving on to understand what APIs are. API or Application Programming Interface is a computing interface which defines interaction between multiple software systems. It defines the kinds of calls or requests that can be made and how to make them, the data format that should be used, the conventions to follow, and etc. So in this example, when we make a call to our backend server, you're following a strict framework for this interaction. The front end and the backend systems are both in consensus on how to communicate and what language to use. And for this particular example, the language is JSON. So JSON API is a specification of how a client should request that resources be fetched or modified and how a server should respond to those requests. Okay, moving on. So now that we understand what JSON is and what APIs are, let's understand how we can use them using jQuery. So let's consider, for example, we want to get user information from the server in our HTML and the jQuery application. How will we do it? So we want to get this information right here, right? And we want to add this to our application. How will we do that? So to get this information from the server, we have to understand the concept of AJAX and its methods that are available for jQuery. AJAX is the art of exchanging data with a server and update the parts of web page without reloading the whole page. And the method we are particularly interested in this case is the jQuery.ajax method. So let's look at an example to see this in action. So let me open up a demo example. And here we have a basic boilerplate HTML code with jQuery added to it. Now let's look at the script tag right here real quick. All right, so now in here, once the document is ready, what we are doing, all right, great. So now in here, we're capturing the click event, okay? So there is a button that we have created to display, to load the users and then display it in this div. So once we click on this button, and we're going to be adding that to the event handler, right? So once the button is clicked, we run the event handler, and in which we are using a jQuery AJAX function to retrieve the information from this particular URL. This function right here requires us to pass the URL and any configuration specific to receiving this data. We'll actually cover this in detail when we work in the project, but let's look at this data by first logging in out. So let me quickly comment this out, and let me log this data out real quick. Save this, open up with live server. All right, so I'm gonna open up the inspect element here, go to console, you can ignore this, and I'm going to click load users. So you can see it logged the data out here. All right, so we got 10 users with their information. Right now, the thing that we want to do is you want to load these, you want to process this data first and then show the username in our DOM. So how would we do that? So first we have to look at the name here. So for each of these users, we'll have to, first of all, this is an array, right? So we'll have to parse this array, get each and every individual user, and then get its name and display it. Okay, so let's go back. So what I've done here is I have created a variable and assigned the result to it. Okay, and for each and every user, we are going to find, let me quickly uncomment this. So for each and every user, we're going to be appending this to a list. So what I've done is I've created a list first. I've added a list tag of an ordered list to the display, right? So display is this div right here. So what I've done is I've created a unordered list, and for each and every user that we get, we are going to append this user, the user's name, to the specific unordered list, right? So let's quickly save this and see how this looks. All right, there you go. We have loaded all of the users and the names in here. So you can ignore this cross button for right now. We'll cover this shortly. But this is how you can load this JSON API data into the HTML DOM. All right, moving on. So in the above example, we created some elements dynamically, right? The list of users were created when we got the data from the AJAX call. Now, what if we want to remove certain users from the list? We need to have an option to delete these individual users, right? So now, if we go back, I have added a remove button right here. This is a cross, okay? That's the multiplication symbol right there. And I've added a class of remove, okay? Now, you may say that we can add the delete button and this click event handler for each user record at a time, but that's not a good way of solving this problem. What if the list of users run into hundreds or thousands? So for this, we'll have to use the on method that we learned in session 5. So let's see how this works. So let me uncomment this. So with this on method right here, we are listening to the click event on multiple elements. So I have multiple elements here. So no matter how many users are created, we'll always have an anchor tag that will have a class of remove, right? And we will find all of these anchor tags that have the class of remove and write in this bit of code here. So it says that this is the actual object, the parent, and remove. So we're removing the entire parent, right? So if we save this and run this, I'm just going to close this. All right. So if I remove one of these, So what is happening right now is I'm removing these users from the DOM tree, right? So what we have done in here is we have added the interactivity to dynamically created assets. So these are dynamically created assets, right? These are dynamically created assets. So we have added the interactivity for these assets, and it's much more easier for us to use the class attribute than to assign an ID for each and every dynamically created uh, asset, right? All right, moving on. So a quick recap. In this session, we learned what a JSON API is. We also saw an example of how JSON looks. We also saw how we can use jQuery to get the information from server using the AJAX method. We learned how we can interact with data that we have received and how we can show it on the DOM. We also learned how we can interact with dynamically added DOM elements, for which we will use the on method. This is the end of our theoretical sessions. From the next session onwards, we'll be working on some projects to sharpen our jQuery programming skills. So we'll definitely be using this JSON API and work on a similar project that you just saw right now. So I'll see you in the next session. Take care. Have a good day.